Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the Roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
Spirit mission, because the kids took paper and got it shredded, and on one side it said "Go Army" and on the back side it said "Beat Air Force." Now imagine it on like 1-inch pieces of shredded paper everywhere throughout your room. Like it was in the laundry bin, it was underneath the mattresses, it was everywhere.
The guy we had, the yearling, set up a roster to go wake him up every hour and tell him how many hours till Army beat Air Force.
Oh my goodness.
His roommate was like, "You better not wake me." I was like, man.
Yeah, if you wake me up, you're gonna die. That's tragic. All right, well, we are live, and so we'll get started. Trigger Joe is not here. He is in the middle of a tornado recovery, so I think that's slightly more important.
He sounds very unhappy. Actually, he's dealing with it pretty well. I mean, like, he's being pretty philosophical about it, but that sucks. That does not sound fun.
He basically said he's surrounded by trees, and they were cutting him out
That sucks,
when he
man.
texted us earlier. So we'll get started. Week 0 is in the books. The regular season is upon us finally. Thank God. And this week, it seems like the top 25 is serving cupcakes. I know that's pretty standard for the first couple of weeks, but now all we need is a clown and some balloon animals, and we've got the circus in town. Welcome back, Trash Talkers, to another College Football Roundtable. If you prefer, we call it Ring Knocker Radio. This is actually a heavy Ring Knocker Radio right now because we have no NCO, so like you're getting 3 West Pointers. So if you
We're going to mess this up, guys. This doesn't end well.
Yeah, all we need is one more lieutenant, and then we'll all be walking in different directions. But I'm your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We got Dano Ikebesa coming to you live out of coastal Connecticut, and Dan Robinson coming from the great state of Virginia. So, guys,
Commonwealth, man. It's a Commonwealth. Be careful. They hurt you out here, man.
yeah, clearly, like I'm going to get kidnapped by the militia later, so that's not going to end well. It's like we won't be doing any drives through Charlottesville, so I'll put a pin on that.
Anyway, I got hit so many times when I moved here, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, what are you guys going to? What did you guys end up watching this weekend? I watched the Navy game and kind of chuckled the whole time as the brutality happened. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. I thought like Navy would at least like put some points on the board. I don't know if the field goal is anything other than like jacking up the Notre Dame defense so they don't get the helmet sticker for the shutout. I think they still, they still win on the yardage thing. But thankfully for Navy, Notre Dame doesn't wear helmet stickers, so it doesn't matter anyway. But defensively, like, I don't know. My question is Notre Dame good, or was Navy just that bad?
I have a thought, but we'll save it for a minute. As you know, we moved both my kids into college on Thursday. So we drove from the house up to Clark University in Worcester, Mass, and then from there up to the University of Vermont, which is not next door, and moved in both kids. So by the time we finished with all that, it was like 8:00 at night. Everybody was tired. End up staying at a little ski lodge up in Vermont. So anyway, I listened to Navy Notre Dame as I was driving home from Worcester, from where I cached my car in a random parking lot. And then I caught Ohio at San Diego State and UMass at New Mexico. Actually went full dual screen to catch both games on Saturday. It was pretty nice. Let me tell you, Navy Notre Dame saved me as I'm driving back. Oh God, what a drive. That was such a long day.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Dano, how about you? Did you watch it?
I was torn, man, because you're watching Navy get beat is always fun. But I think the problem I see is, I'm becoming an old man looking at the NIL and all this stuff going, and the no cut blocks. I'm wondering how much that's going to blow back on the rest of the service academies. You know what I mean? The rules changes, and it's sad to see. You know what I mean? It's I don't know if that's indicative of where it's going, or if Nate, or to your point, Notre Dame's all that good. You know what I mean? But
yeah. I mean, statistically, we all knew Sam Hartman was going to show up.
Yeah,
like that was pretty much a guarantee. But
and Rob, I ended up watching Vanderbilt in Hawaii as I was laying in bed, and it was a good game. I was surprised. I was like,
yeah,
oh
hey,
this is actually the best game this weekend.
Hey, I told you that was one of my picks, but I will gloat about that later.
Yeah.
But I ended up watching, the first half of the Hawaii Vanderbilt game. I was just like, okay, this isn't going to get any better. That stadium is wrecked. They need to fix that ASAP. I don't think it'll be done by the end of the season. It's an eyesore, but at least the football contest was better than the stadium. And then, dude, UTEP, what is going on there? Like, coach, you got 2 plays in about 30 seconds. And you throw a fade. All right, I get it. You take a shot at the end zone, maybe, right? But if you have a timeout, move it to the center of the field to give your kicker the best chance to have the easiest kick that he can get, and at least tie the game and give yourself a chance to win it in overtime. But you literally threw the game away with 2 really bad passes.
My grandfather has the Texas Western jacket I got when he passed away. So when they won the NCAA championship, so I got a soft spot for UTEP, but man, that was terrible. That was just, you're right. It's just hard to watch.
It's just like, there's sometimes, sometimes the team just gets beat on the field. That was Navy against Notre Dame. UTEP lost because of coaching, right? Like, they had a chance to at least tie it and then go into overtime and roll the dice. And I get it. You've got a young kicker. I think he was a freshman. He missed a couple kicks early in the game, but now you're really just telling this kid, like, if you thought he was a basket case beforehand, now you've just sealed the deal, right? Like, he's like, oh, you really can't kick, so we're not even going to give you a chance to try and tie the game, which super sucks. But that's enough about Saturday night. So we'll move into our sponsor. We have Dan Robinson actually here in the, in the flesh, virtually, of course. Buyer Barn. We have a new sponsor here. As for football, it's Buyer Barn. Founded by Dan. He's on the screen. For those of you guys that don't know him, he ran a traditional farm co-op and thought he could bring it into the 21st century. Buyer Barn helps by providing reduced animal issues through reduced animal and owner contact. It reduces animal fraud through their buyer and seller rating system. Slow down, Rob. All right. A fully integrated auction platform with secure payments and convenience to buy and sell at your own time. And you get better market pricing because of the wider audience. Think eBay versus a yard sale. Somebody walks up to you, your yard sale says, hey, I'll give you that for $2. You just want it gone, so you pay $2. Anyway, Buyer Barn is dedicated to helping the small farmers in America and is providing a special discount to military veterans who wish to assist them in the family farm revolution. Go to buyerbarn.com or email them at info@buyerbarn.com. There's also a little tab on the side of the As for Football website, and you can go there and be on the lookout for the Buyer Barn Cow of the Week. We were going to call it Jordan's Cow, based off of this cow loan discussion that we had last season. However, it's more appropriate.
I was dying laughing on the tractor when you guys had that. I got to say, it's nice seeing you guys. I'm usually on the track. I used to do it commuting to DC from Richmond, but now I'm on the tractor with listening to podcasts. So
yeah. So either way, look for it on the social media. You'll see the Buyer Barn Cow of the Week. So we'll showcase our junior players on the Army football team. Dan, if you don't mind, let's dive into the Service Academy standing, and I'm going to go check on my barking dog.
So Army not only named their captains, they also named their starters for the game against ULM. You want to hear more, we're going to go into that at great detail on tomorrow's As for Football, Army football show, recording that tomorrow about 5:30 p.m. for the firsties who are listening right now. Air Force opens this week against FCS Robert Morris. I don't think that one's on regular TV. I think that's on actual pay-per-view. And finally, Navy has a bye week after getting drubbed. We talked about this a little. I personally thought their rushing offense looked okay, but inconsistent. But their rushing defense got worked, and that was the best part of their team last year. And their passing offense is actively bad. Man, they got to figure some stuff out. And, they're not going to survive the whole season on just the fullback trap and the option pitch. So, that's they got some work to do up there in Annapolis. Finally, Coast Guard opens against the University of New England with a 1 p.m. kickoff this weekend, while the Merchant Marine Academy takes on Western Connecticut State starting at noon.
I got to say, when I saw Robert Morris, my dad told me one thing, Dano, one time, if you don't know a school's mascot, you can't get beat by them because that's just bad. I had to look it up. It's the Romos. So I didn't know that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Learn
very
something.
interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. And to back to Dano's point, man, about Navy. Like, what's with the wing T, man? That's a high school offense. Like, seriously, I can show you films from my high school that ran the Delaware wing T offense. Like, that is not a joke. And it's like, I like it because, again, you still get all the misdirection and triple option. It's basically it's an offset eye. Got that. You got split backs, makes it a little bit easier to pass. I'm concerned about the offense because that's not like, hey, we're adding some new wrinkles. Are those new wrinkles? Like to go back to a playbook that was popular when I was in high school, that's 30 years backwards, not forwards. And the air raid has been out for a while. I fully hope that Navy transitions to the air raid and has the same woes that Army did when they did so. And I will look forward to that for the rest of the season, but they got beat up pretty bad. I mean, their defense did not look good. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see what happens. But Joe is not here, so we will not have a Blue Falcon of the week. We'll try and get him to text it to us after he comes up for air, but he's got some stuff going on. So I'll dive into the AP top 10. Top 10, there's not going to be any movement. I don't think anything's going to move, even with Notre Dame, like mudhole stomping Navy. Yeah, I don't think it's going to move for at least, this week unless there's an upset. So number one is the Georgia Bulldogs at UGA, Michigan Wolverines, Sands, Blue Pants. You got the Ohio State Buckeyes, who have a quarterback controversy, believe it or not. They got two potential starters on their team. That'll be interesting to see. Bama, how do you replace Bryce Young? It's Bama. They probably have 6 5-star quarterbacks in the quarterback room, just to be honest. LSU, they're going to be a solid team. They're a sleeper. I think they're going to gain a lot of momentum based off of last year. I think the kids are actually digging in on the new system, particularly offensively. And I think LSU might make some waves this year.
Do we hope for some minor injuries early in the season on that one? Or, I mean, nothing major. I don't want to hurt the kids.
I have very mixed feelings about it because LSU was the first school to recruit me at a time that I really just emotionally had gotten beat up by my parents for not having any offers. So I will always be grateful to them. Like you have no idea. So Yeah. And then you got UFC, USC, like they're trying to do their campaign. I think, Caleb Williams is a pick, fumble, or loss away from being knocked out of the top spot for the Heisman Trophy. And I've got some other stuff down later in the outline to talk about. Penn State University, is that going to last? I mean, Penn State is always in the top 10 and they play well, and then they run into either Michigan or an Ohio State and they fall out of the top 10, or then they just get completely walloped and blindsided by like Michigan State, and it completely changes the whole scope of their season.
Plus, when the Big 10 becomes the Big 20 next year, it might be even tougher for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. Like, I don't want to be the person that has to set those games with the new schedule. Florida State is number 8. You've got Clemson at number 9, and the University of Washington. I think UW basically replaced TCU. I think Penix is going to come back, and he's a much better quarterback than what we've seen coming out of there in a while. But again, not a lot of movement. I think we'll see some shakeups probably week 2 or week 3. I think the top 10 will stay the same unless somebody loses or edges one of the cupcake teams early in the season. If it's a closer game than the experts think, I think things might shift. But I will say this. I don't think Notre Dame is going to get much of a bump for crushing Navy on national television, but they did win for pride. And and one other point on that game, and we will move on, is what was with the puke green warm-ups in the suits and stuff. Like that was like, dude, I get it. Like you got name, image, and likeness, bro. You don't have to buy an ugly suit like that and wear it on your walkout because it was not cool. But other than that, let's talk about the ACC for a minute. Who are you watching in the ACC? And normally we talk a lot about the Big Ten. We talk about the service academies, both in FBS and FCS, but the ACC is quietly starting to gain a lot of momentum. Everybody's talking about it this season. Everybody thinks that Florida State is going to make a run in the playoffs this year. Do we think that's true? And do we even have any ACC fans out there? We got one person in the peanut gallery, so hopefully they're an ACC fan or at least watch the teams. But Dana, what do you think about the ACC?
Well, we were texting about this earlier today. They have probably the most interesting opening week slate of any of the Power 5 conferences. You got NC State at UConn on Thursday, Louisville at Georgia Tech, which is just a conference game in week 1, which is amazing. North Carolina at South Carolina, another amazing game for week 1. LSU at Florida State. Are they for real? I mean, ask me next week, I'll tell you. And finally, Clemson at Duke on Monday, which is also wild. So, yeah, man, I want to see the Vols. I know we're not really talking about the SEC right now, but I want to see the Vols like roll the Cavs and hush up some of these doubters. Not because I hate the Cavs, but just, everybody's like, oh, Tennessee's not going to be that good. And then, like we just said, Florida State, right? They put up a good showing against LSU, squeak out a win at home. People will be going crazy. The line on the game's pretty close. And finally, Drake May's back at North Carolina, going to South Carolina. Like, that's a really, really interesting game early in the season.
Yeah, so much so that that's actually the site for College Game Day.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it, I was like, man, like I really want to go to game day, but I am not getting up at freaking 1 o'clock in the morning, driving 2 hours to Charlotte to sit for 3 hours before the gates even open and the show records. So it's free to get in, but you got to get in. And so in order to get there, you got to spend a few hours earlier on the take. I would love to see College Game Day live, but I don't know. For me, look, let's just be honest. I'm not sure. I don't even know if I like the ACC anymore. I used to like it.
Man, I have, and Rob, you're probably in the same boat. Since moving to Virginia, the ACC's on everywhere here, and there's never any decent games near the end of the season, And the one I will watch though this week, and not to interrupt if you had something there, Rob, but I was going to say watch Virginia Tech at ODU, man. ODU's beat this. If you're a degenerate gambler, they beat the spread. I think last 4 years they played an ACC. They're 4-0 against the ACC on the spread, and I think they beat Virginia Tech, but they weren't in Blacksburg. They were home. But and the spread's only like 6 points, I think, on it. It's nothing on Virginia Tech ODU. So
that's crazy.
That's gonna be an interesting game. Yeah.
That's actually a line that might be worth watching. But for me, like I said, not really sure about that ACC. Like there's been moments where I've watched, like when Lamar Jackson was QB1 at Louisville, like everybody was watching that guy. That guy's incredible. Like, who doesn't want to watch that? I think I will watch more for individual players than I will for the league itself. I think the only change that might draw a little bit more attention to the ACC, particularly with all the TV stuff that's going on, is if Notre Dame moved in there permanently. I think they did it for the pandemic, which was good for them as far as being able to have a season. But I think, long term, for the longevity of the program with that television contract that they have, like if somehow the ACC, uppity ups can convince Notre Dame to come over, that's hardcore television contract with NBC for years.
I know they got that lock-in contract with the ACC, but my thing is looking at, I'm an Oklahoma fan, man. I didn't see it coming until the talk started for TV with the Big 12. So I'm wondering what the pressure is on Clemson and Florida State to go to the SEC at some point. Yeah. I mean, the money's going to be good. Yeah. So
and that's the thing is, like,
it's rough.
If we go to a Power 3 and the Power 5 ish is still there, for Notre Dame, that's their fastest path to get to the playoff, right? If you're a conference champion in the ACC, that gives you a chance to pop into the 18th playoff. Like, as an independent, I don't know.
Yeah. If you think of it as a broadcast rights collective, though, Notre Dame has a hell of a sweet deal with NBC.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like they're a one-team broadcast rights collective, and they have the national fan base to actually back that up. So I don't know what the money is like on a year-over-year basis, but they're the only current independent that it's like, do we really need to do something different because this is working?
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you on that, Dano. I just think that would be the only thing that would make like the ACC competition a little bit more interesting to me, because then you have two large powerhouse teams that are really, fighting for that recruiting time, because you get they already had the TV time. So how do I recruit in a region that's close? And they're ACC for basketball. You know what I mean?
Well, how much money's flowing into that region with the Big Ten, right? I mean,
Yeah, because you still got Maryland that's getting fringe dollars from the Big Ten. So
Rutgers and Maryland, man.
Oh man.
Yeah, like do they
They
even
made
have
out
a
like
football-
champs.
Yeah, do they even have a football team? I don't even know. But one of the things that I also notice about that ACC that may get me to watch is Drake May. Like this kid came back. All the confusion and the craziness in the offseason. Is he leaving? Is he not leaving? The kid decided to stay, which is great. But I think he's sitting there licking his chops and quietly, he probably won't say it out loud, but deep down inside, he's like, man, please let Caleb Williams have a bad game or have him lose, because that's going to be the difference between winning and losing. And like, I still, to this day, credit to Caleb Williams for being an outstanding player, but I find it hard to believe that a team that wasn't undefeated had the Heisman Trophy winner on it. That's kind of been the staple for quarterbacks. Like if you run the table in your conference, you're in the driver's seat for winning. That was a comment about CJ Stroud. Well, he's a great quarterback, but he didn't win. He lost to Michigan, right? So at some point, when does that count for, like, are we doing charity for the Pac-12 because we knew this breakup was happening this season, to put some eyeballs over there, like, hey, Caleb Williams is the Heisman Trophy guy and he's trying to go for 2. I don't know. The storyline kind of plays out that way, but it's just interesting, to see a guy win the Heisman after losing, to his rival, and then they blew that bowl game in a horrible fashion. And then again, FSU, we talked about this. We're going to beat this horse to death. But the last point is, like, are they for real? We'll see come Saturday, because they're playing LSU. Like, that's going to be a huge game. And I think that's probably going to be the marquee matchup this week, in my opinion. But we'll pass it over to Dan to talk about Craig Oxane.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Well, as you know, Craig Oxane is the other sponsor of this show. He is the vice president of residential lending for Draper and Kramer in Chicago, a member of the West Point class of 1994, licensed to lend in all 50 states, one of the biggest VA lenders in the country. Craig's going to give you the best deal he can, super competitive rates. Guys, this mortgage process is confusing as it can be. Rates are moving all over the place. Now is not the time to make a deal with some clown who's just trying to make a buck off you. Deal with somebody who cares, who's going to be straight with you, who's not just some mindless big box bank or mindless website who's going to bury you in fine print. This is how the West Point Network functions. Craig is helping us stay in business here at As for Football, and we are trying to introduce you to the guy who can give you the best deal on a mortgage that we can. Plus, Craig doesn't charge lender's fees for veterans. That's a savings of like $1,300. That's a lot of money. So Craig Oxane, vice president of residential lending, check him out. His link's on our website. Just go to As for Football, click it, fill out a quick questionnaire. You'll be talking to that guy in a couple of hours. It couldn't be easier.
Thanks, Dan. All right, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's talk games of the week. We got a full boat of games this week, and there are a lot of them. And they start on Thursday this week, which is awesome because we're going into the long weekend. So you might as well enjoy some football. If you got Friday off, you can stay up late and have a couple beers. But starting on Thursday, big only ranked matchup is Utah at Florida. I think later on in the season, maybe we would care. Right now, I don't know. Utah usually starts off pretty strong, and Florida gets better as the season goes on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those guys. You got North Carolina State and UConn. I know Dana will be watching that one. Nebraska at Minnesota. That may be an interesting game. I don't know. PJ Fleck, see if he can pull it together against the new Nebraska head coach. They got to get better. They kicked Scott Frost out. They had the hometown hero, but what's the deal with that? And then of course, that's really it for Thursday night. Dano, I kind of figured you'll be watching UConn and NC State, but what about you, Mr. Robinson?
I'm going to be watching UCF, man. I got 2 sisters that graduated there. One's married to a coach, he's crew coach, NCAA crew coach, and the other one are rabid fans. And the other thing, being an Oklahoma fan, this is a weird season, the Big 12. So I hear arguments all the time about schools that could come in and beat any school in a big conference, and I think it's interesting to watch these schools enter into these bigger conferences because you get beat up every week. So I'm watching UCF this season just to see. Kent State's not going to be much of a challenge, I don't think, but it'll be interesting to watch them through the season going forward. So
yeah, I think, but I don't remember the record of the Golden Flashes. They had flashes of brilliance, pun intended, last season. They did pretty well, and I think I know that they were close to the end, looking good towards the end of the season, but
And UCF is hot and cold, so they get they get streaks too. So it could be
one of the funniest jokes ever was like the UCF guy that was like, "Oh yeah, I got my 2017 trophy in the trunk." You know what I mean? Like, no, you don't. But
well, you know what it stands for, right? My sisters all went there. You can't finish. So there's too much stuff going on in Orlando, man.
Yeah, they can't pay attention to anything.
No.
All right, so moving on to Friday, you've got Central Michigan and Michigan State. Again, that one's an early one, but I know Joe will probably be watching that one because his little brother is playing. And then you've got Missouri State and Kansas. Like, can Kansas return to form? I mean, they're, starting QB1 had that pretty significant injury last year that kind of took him out right before the K-State game. And so they never really recovered after he got injured. Stanford and Hawaii. Hey, can Hawaii pull one off? Not against Stanford, I don't think. But Friday slate, what do you guys got? I'm probably not going to be watching too much. If I do, it will probably be Georgia Tech and Louisville.
Yeah, Georgia Tech, Louisville. I mean,
none of this really speaks to me. I wish they would put Stanford at Hawaii on at a time that isn't, midnight. But what can you do?
2 a.m.
The Pac-12 after dark, man, they're still not getting rid of that moniker, even though the whole league is falling apart, and that's part of the reason why everybody's moving.
But why are they struggling to get broadcast rights? Is because
I think
the East Coast, which is where a lot of people live, for better or worse, can't watch these games unless you're a night owl in a way that most 50-year-old men just are not.
Yeah.
And you see the argument between the Big Ten and the SEC commissioners right now, because the Big Ten saying we stretch across the country, and the SEC says we're regionally intact. So I think I don't know if it's going to help USC to be going to Rutgers, once a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean it's almost arguing in the absurdum. Like, hey, look, I got to travel 3 hours to the East Coast just to get enough TV time to make it matter. And then the argument, for argument's sake, is like, hey, you guys had the guy who won a Heisman Trophy last year. So why would we, upset the apple cart to make that happen? And again, we know it's NIL. It's NIL money.
It's NIL
or
money,
it's just it's being able to make the most compelling argument for a kid that wants to go to the pros, right?
You ever seen the articles on Hawaii? I mean, their budget is crazy. I think they got an exception from the NCAA on travel budget because I just think about it. Every week they got to travel somewhere, or every other week. So it's nuts.
Insanity. Well, and that's part of the reason why they have week 0. So whoever plays Hawaii in week 0 actually gets a little extra cushion and an additional home game because of that, because of the travel time required. All right, moving into Saturday. This is where, the big money is starting to happen. So in the early kickoff, ranked matchup, Tennessee versus Virginia. I think that's going to be probably the game to watch in the early hours. You got Utah State and Iowa. Can Utah State pick up where they left off last year? Don't know. Iowa is usually a good team. If you're playing at Iowa during the day, better chance of winning than you do in the evening. Something about the stadium at night that kind of throws teams off. And then you've got Arkansas State and Oklahoma. Like, way to line up the powder puff, kid.
Hey, they're in the SEC now. You got to have those powder puff weeks.
Well,
they're going. They got to warm up for it, man.
Yeah, I legitimately think that Arkansas State's going to get punched in the mouth. Actually, the early game window that I would probably watch for sure, I'm going to watch Colorado and TCU. Man, I'm banking on Coach Prime this year. I think TCU got they got gypped in the rankings. They should have been in the top 10. Max Duggan was a huge part of the team, but he wasn't the only person on the team.
Well, okay. I'm surprised
the spread on that game is crazy.
About Oklahoma.
By the way, I'm looking that up right now, but the spread on that TCU game is crazy. TCU is favored by some absurd amount of money.
Yeah, I think it's like 20 points.
20,
they got
20
prime
points.
time, don't they? That's why it's getting TV coverage.
But I mean, it's a completely different team. Like that Colorado team is going to field 0 players from last year's team. It's a new organization from scratch.
It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm banking on Coach Prime, and I'll be honest with you. I grew up watching. I'm Eric Bieniemy fan. I'm an Eric Bieniemy fan from way back in the day when Colorado actually was good. And that was a long time ago. So one, I want to see Colorado come back and make a comeback, but the other piece of it is, it's like, hey, there's an interesting story there. Between which team can recover the quickest. Is it going to be Colorado? Is it going to be TCU? I think TCU is good. I don't think TCU is 20 points good. You've got East Carolina and Michigan. That going to be an interesting game at the Big House. East Carolina is surprisingly tough. Do not be surprised if that game's a lot closer than the line.
Joe's cursing you right now.
Yeah, but hey, I would take the spread on that one. No joke. I would take ECU to cover if I was a betting man. You've got Mercer at Ole Miss at 2. So this is the early afternoon kicks. You got Portland State and Oregon at 3. You got Ohio State and Indiana. Like, why even, televise these games? Tennessee State at Notre Dame. Why? Like, that's 2 powder puffs in a row. Like, Notre Dame, you're not making your case to go to the national championship or even into the playoffs when you're playing 2 teams that you can handily beat. You got Texas and Rice. That's going to be like, hey, let's see how many touchdowns Quinn Ewers can throw. Maybe an NCAA record. Boise State and Washington at 3:30. You got Buffalo and Wisconsin. I think that'll be an interesting game because that'll be the first time with Luke Fickell as the head coach of the team, and because he moved over from Cincinnati over to Wisconsin. And then the only other highlight, again, you got early evening kick, is UT Martin versus Georgia. Why? This is going to be like it'll be like who on the backup squad for Georgia is going to show up and score some points.
Hey man, listen, UT Martin has got an athletic department to fund. Let them make their money. It's hard to make money in this country.
Yeah, true statement. Yeah, Southeast Missouri and K-State at 7, New Mexico and Texas A&M at 7. The game that I know I will be watching for sure is going to be Army at ULM. Take Army to freaking beat the brakes off of these dudes. I just don't think ULM is going to have much for them. Not a whole lot of positive commentary coming out of their front office either. Like, I just don't see anything. And the fact that you're trolling James from Brigade Review on Twitter to try and get insights to the new Army offense. Bro, you got some work to do. Like, I'm just saying, I'm just calling it like I see it. You got West Virginia and Penn State. That's probably going to be the best matchup of the early evening game. So if you're not watching Army or Army takes firm control of that game, I would watch West Virginia, Penn State. That's almost the backyard brawl-ish,
That game was electric last year.
Yeah, it was really good. Then you've got North Carolina and South Carolina, number 21 versus South Carolina. Hey, can Spencer Rattler play season spoiler again? I mean, that's literally what that guy does. Like, he is the season spoiler for a lot of folks. And then the late game. So for those of you guys that want to stay up on the left coast, you've got Western Illinois and New Mexico State, Northern Arizona and Arizona, Idaho and San Diego State, and then you've got Coastal traveling all the way out to UCLA. Woo!
They're going to get worked. I'm sorry. They're going to get worked.
Yeah, well, and again, those types of games, like you said, Dan, are great for making money, but not so great for preserving your team early in the season. And you're risking if Grayson McCall gets hurt or they re-aggravate that shoulder, that changes the entire complexion of Coastal Carolina's season for the rest of the year. Moving on to Sunday, God, hard to believe that I'm saying that, but there's Sunday football in college. But you've got number 18 Oregon and San Jose State. Then you've got LSU and Florida State. Like, I think if you have a television, you're going to be watching that game. Like, if not, you're going to have a radio and an antenna trying to, figure out the best way to tune in on that one. You got Clemson and Duke. There's still tickets available for that game.
That's Monday Night Football. Clemson at Duke is what passes for Monday Night Football Labor Day weekend. Yeah,
for sure. And if you're a fan of Clemson or Duke, like, tickets are like $55. But like, if you've ever watched a football game in a high school stadium outside of being in high school, that's what Duke is. Unfortunately, their stadium is really, really tiny. And, but you get good seats just about everywhere. So you pay $50, you can see the whole game. Like, that's the upside of it. But before we get to weekly locks, what do you guys think about the scheduling? For me, it's like, I don't like cupcake games early in the season. I think just because of the gravity of everything else, you put these Power 5 schools against cupcake schools and they beat them up really badly, just because they have to, right? Because it's all about establishing dominance for the pecking order of the AP.
Well, and Nick Saban said it once that he thought, they were complaining about the SEC schedule. They do it usually in the middle, but he said, until somebody comes up with a rule like the NFL where Power 5s have to play other Power 5s out of conference games, which I thought was a great idea. He said, I'm not going to do it. So there's no incentive. I would rather play it early if you're the big school, and pay that money to warm up on them. But I don't know. I don't think it's good anytime, Rob. I wouldn't want to play Alabama week 7 either. Yeah. if I'm
Yeah.
Liberty or
I mean, as an organization, I understand the math behind it.
Yeah.
But from the physical protection of your players, I think
100%.
not putting those guys in jeopardy, because again, coming out the gate, dudes are a lot more hungry that first week, and so they play a lot more aggressively, and because people don't have injuries or not nicked up, so they may play a little bit harder in those early weeks. But anyway, let's move on to.
I will say one other thing, Rob. I know you guys covered this last week, so I don't want to redo it. But man, looking at the networks these things are on, I'm like, good night.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing the invasion of streaming service, and I know
SSEN. I'm like, what is that? I gotta go look that thing up.
Yeah, I know that. Like James had talked about that last week. So you got the Mountain West Network. You've got a lot of games on ESPN Plus, which if you're behind
I hope the guy gets a better iPhone than he did against Army and Coastal Carolina last year. They start filming it, man. That was horrible.
That's the thing. Like ESPN Plus, you're getting the Ocho team that's going to be calling the game as well as the camera crew. And again, it is what it is. One of the surprising things is like the Pac-12 network. Again, if you guys are trying to maintain your footprint and do what you can, like don't put your network on a streaming service. The only way that you're going to be able to watch the Pac-12 is if you get Fubo or whatever, Fobo TV or whatever it is. Like I had to look it up to say like, hey, well, you ain't watching any Pac-12 games, even if they're early in the evening. So you couldn't watch USC unless you're on the left coast anyway, or you have a massive, $400, $500 freaking cable package, and nobody wants to pay extra just for one channel to watch a bunch of teams that I really don't care about. But you're seeing a lot of activity on, like, CBS is now partnered with Paramount Plus for their games for college football. And believe it or not, the Big Ten has got something working with Peacock. So you're going to see Big Ten games not only on ABC, CBS, but you're also going to see them on Peacock on your streaming service.
Yeah.
And again,
that is annoying.
Yeah, it really is. But at least it gives you options. So the only upside about having like multiple streaming platforms that you can use is like it's easier to control with your remote. when you're using multiple screens, because then I can just log into that one channel and leave it there and then jump to the next one. But other than that, madness. All right, let's go into weekly locks.
Weekly locks.
Dano, you're up.
Okay, so I have 3, and I almost took a 4th, but I didn't. But anyway, I have UConn plus 14.5 as a home underdog, hosting, as we said, the NC State Wolfpack. This is a popular pro pick, which is kind of what made me want to jump on it. I think the game might be close overall. It's a big game for the Huskies. They've been advertising it locally, come pack the Rents, which is Rensselaer Stadium. UTSA at Houston over 60.5 points. What can you say? That game's always a barn burner. And we didn't mention that one, but it's on Fox Sports 1. Pretty interesting game if you get bored with some of the cupcake games. And finally, I hesitate to say this, but Army at ULM over 47.5. I think Army might put up 47.5 if you want to know the truth. And then, like I said, I was really tempted to take South Carolina getting 2.5 at home against North Carolina, but let's just stick to 3 picks. That was my 4th.
All right. Wow. That's pretty deep. I got Joe's info. So Joe texted me over. He's calling Michigan to hit the over 51.5. Final score is going to be 49-13 against East Carolina University. That's a fair pick. I think ECU will play them a lot tougher. ECU is always one of those sneakily quiet teams, and they don't get a lot of pub because of the conference they're in. They were pretty damn good last year, and took Navy down to the wire, took a couple teams down to the wire last year. So I'll be surprised to see if they don't sock Michigan in the nose a little bit. And is Michigan going to make any changes potentially with an interim head coach? As much as I don't want to talk about this and dive too deep into it, but the bottom line is, how did Jim Harbaugh get in trouble for something that like not everybody was sure about? So he's sitting for 3 games. And the last time we saw this, and Joe sent it out in the text, but last time we saw this was when assistant coach did some nefarious things to his spouse, and then it was covered up by Urban Meyer, And the only thing that kind of came out of that was Ryan Day got his live audition for the head coaching position in those 3 games that Urban was out. So are we going to see something similar at Michigan? Is this a test to figure out who's going to be the next guy in the seat at Michigan? Or, is this just, an anomaly that had to get taken care of? All right, so moving on to my picks. For the record, I hit both of mine last week. You guys said I was crazy taking Hawaii to cover, but they did. But like I said, I'm rolling with Coach Prime this week. I don't think that TCU's offense is going to be that potent without Max Duggan. I mean, their backup was good, but not Max Duggan good. So I think 20.5 is not enough. I'm expecting that line probably to drop Wednesday or Thursday based off of media. I think, this might be the game where emotion wins out over skill. I think Coach Prime has got those guys ready to go, and I think they're going to play hard. And I don't think that they're going to accept, losing by 20 points. And I just don't think it's going to happen. Take OSU. Take the over of OSU against Indiana 59. I think Indiana, they'll score at least 10 in garbage time. That's what normally happens with Ohio State. They kind of come out, play weird the first half, third quarter, they'll blow the doors out. You're going to see at least 2 to 3 touchdown receptions from Marvin Harrison Jr. And then, garbage time with the backups. They'll score a couple points. And then take the under on Wisconsin and Buffalo. I think it'll be under, overall. Luke Fickell has some big shoes to fill, but I just don't think the offense is going to be that potent coming out of the gate. I'm not brave enough to hit the spread. I think Buffalo will score more than enough to cover 27, but I think it's within the realm of the possible for them to cover while still hitting the over on that one. But other than that, we'll move on to the bandwagon update because we're almost at the end of the show. If you are not registered, you still have 3 days to register for Bandwagon Fantasy Sports. Right now, Dano is on top. Matt is in second, and there is a 5-way tie for third and like a 6-way tie for fourth. And so you're muted, Dano.
Not only am I on top, I'm up 10-6, and then 2 is in third place. So I'm up by 4 points, and I also hit both my picks last week. So
nice.
You guys, nobody thought San Diego State was going to cover, but they did.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I'm actually liking the bandwagon sports because I don't have to do much with it. I just got to check the scores, and if things aren't going well, I make some trades. But other than that, you still have time to sign up. I know that, things are going to change. I think there'll be a shakeup. Those who pick teams for week 0 actually are at advantage, and it looks like that's what Dano did to jump out early.
Scored 10 points. Yeah. I had to trade out of 3 positions today. Absolutely.
Yeah. But smart move on his part, take advantage of the early games, but easy to do. This brings us to the end of the college football roundtable. Surprisingly, it's gone pretty quick. It's just like the off season. We are at college football for real this week. Army football show will be recorded tomorrow. Today is Monday, the 28th. So we'll do the Army football show tomorrow. If not, make sure that you're checking us out at As for Football for both your Army and your college football coverage. If you haven't signed up for the Bandwagon Fantasy Sports League, you have until September the 1st to do that. We appreciate you guys coming on. We had a couple guys from the Peanut Gallery jump in and jump out. So for those of you guys that popped in, we appreciate you coming on the show. Dan, as always, great to have you here. That's Robinson, not Cabeza.
Yeah, I'm always
thanks, guys.
Yeah. Because Dano is always here. Hey, if you haven't done it, check out BuyerBarn.com. Still thinking goat roast. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it at the stadium, though. Good grief, because all the tickets are sold out for Army Navy this year.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could auction off your
you just need a parking spot for a goat roast. You don't need to go in.
Yeah, that fair point. So if you guys are still looking to roast a goat in the freezing northwest or northeast, please feel free. BuyerBarn.com is out there. Take a look and see if there's something that you want to buy. They do everything but horses on BuyerBarn.com. All right, folks, this has been your College Football Roundtable. I am Rob, your host, the Angry Colonel, calling out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We got Dano E. Cabeza coming out of coastal Connecticut, and from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Dan Robinson. Hey, thanks you guys for checking us out this week, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks.
BULM.
Beat them.
All right. I will cut this together.
Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Tune in next week as the AFF team brings you more hot takes and college football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first platform to perform online auctions and sales for farm animals. BuyerBarn.com is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and are extending a special discount to military veterans who want to help in the revolution of the family farm. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn.com, BYREBARN.com to learn more and to get started, or email them at info@BuyerBarn.com. Thanks again for listening to Ask for Football College Football Roundtable, and as always, beat Navy.